And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Elizabeth Boisson, president and co-founder of Helping Parents Heal. Elizabeth had a shared death experience with her son who was at the base camp of Mount Everest, which we're going to talk about and more. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you. I am so grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Well, we're excited to have you. And Elizabeth, can you please start with that experience that you had with your son?
I would love to. And it was a life-changing experience for me when that happened. I'd grown up kind of agnostic. Mostly spiritual because we lived in India for a very long time when I was young. For about 5 years, I'd started doing yoga there when I was in middle school and then in high school. And actually in college, I'd go back and forth to India from college. But I never really explored anything about life after death. And so when Morgan transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest, he was on an exchange program with the University of North Carolina, or excuse me, the University of Arizona. And he was with 13 other kids, and they landed in Lhasa. And then immediately the next day, Lhasa is 11,000 feet. They went up to 19,000 feet to the base camp. And unfortunately, going up the mountain, there were a lot of kids who were getting very sick. They were throwing up. Morgan was holding their heads because he was a senior. He'd already been in China one other time. These kids were younger, and so he was kind of the leader of the group. And kids were also urinating on themselves in the bus, which is a big sign of altitude sickness. But the Chinese tour guide that was with them, and initially this whole trip was organized by two professors from the university who ended up not going. None of these kids knew very much about altitude sickness, and the Chinese tour guide wanted to get them up before dark to the base camp. And then when they got up there, Morgan had an incredible headache. He never used to get headaches, but he had a splitting headache. And the only thing that he had that he could take was NyQuil. So he took a NyQuil and he went to bed. And they were in a yurt, which is a big tent. So all of them were together. And during the night, he was up and wandering around, calling people by the wrong name. And in the morning, they were going to go back down the mountain, and he was foaming at the mouth, and this was 9 o'clock in the morning, and they couldn't wake him up. So one of the kids who is, his mother is a doctor, and she is in Washington State. He called her, and she said, "Get him down the mountain as quickly as you can. It's altitude sickness." And so they loaded him on the bus, and my son was and still is 6'6", 280 pounds. So it wasn't an easy task for these kids to do. They started down the mountain. They had very little oxygen in the bus, and he stopped breathing. And in the meantime, the director of the program had called me and said that he was being evacuated, that Morgan was being evacuated, that he had a number for his roommate if I'd like to call him. And of course, I wanted to call him right away. And I called Colin, and when I got him, he said, "Miss Boisson, it doesn't look good." He stopped breathing. We had to drag him off the bus, and we're attempting CPR on him, but CPR for these kids wasn't something that they really even knew how to do, but they were in the middle of nowhere. And so I told Colin, please put the phone up to his ear. And I told Morgan that I loved him, that I was proud of him, and not to be afraid. I have no idea of how I did that. I just knew that that was what I needed to tell him. And it was incredible. I got this huge hug from Morgan from the other side of the world. We're in Cave Creek, Arizona, so it was a long way away. But I could feel his love. I could feel the fact that he appreciated that I was saying these things to him. And I realized in an instant that love lives forever and that we will always be with our loved ones in spirit. And so when this happened, I set out to see if other parents were also experiencing the same thing that I had experienced.
Have you had any communication with him since then?
Yes, he gives me hugs all the time. He also sends me incredible signs. He had a red Toyota Tacoma that we had just bought for him a couple years before he passed. And whenever I'm looking for a sign, I will see 3 of them come towards me on the road. And I know that Morgan is okay with whatever decision I'm making. They're kind of rare now, but I see them all the time. And there are so many other things. In fact, he has saved the life of one of his best buddies at U of A. And actually, it's written about in a book, so I know it's okay for me to tell you. Morgan was a cheerleader at U of A and football player in high school, and then cheerleader. He was lifting girls over his head in at U of A. And the mascot, Dan McGee, who is one of the sweetest people you'd ever meet, his brother also passed early on, and he had told my daughters that it was going to be really difficult to move forward and heal. And that was at the bonfire they had for Morgan down at U of A. Later on, he finished his firefighting degree. I don't think that's what you call it, firefighting. He is now a firefighter in Peoria. And the first job that he went out on, he and his buddy were in a house that was 2-story, and they were getting the car out of the garage. So his buddy, who was also a firefighter, had put the car in neutral, and Dan was in front of the car, and he was going to push the car out. And all of a sudden, he felt someone grab him around his waist and pull him backwards. I mean, it was just like his feet were pulled off the ground, and an air conditioning unit fell right where Dan was standing. And the firefighter in the car who had the car in neutral said, "Dude, did you just see that?" Because it was pretty amazing. And Dan knows that that was Morgan who saved him. And he named his son after Morgan as well, which we are just so proud of. My daughter also had the same kind of experience while she was in Paris. This is also in a book, so I know it's okay for me to say something about this as well. But she was studying there at Sciences Po, and she was out at New Year's, and she was with her cousin and her cousin's boyfriend. She had taken some Imitrex before she went out, which is something for migraine headaches, and then she was drinking champagne and she felt awful. So she told Anne-Sophie, her cousin, that she needed to get home, and Anne-Sophie said, "Oh, okay, bye, have fun." But she didn't know where she was. Anne-Sophie and her boyfriend brought her there. It was way, way across Paris from where she lived. And so she left the place that she was, where the party was. She forgot to get her coat. She had a tiny cocktail dress on. She jumped into a taxi that was sitting in front of the place that this party was going on. And then about a block later, she realized she didn't recognize the person who was in the seat beside her. So she jumped out of the car. She looked up at a street sign and realized she'd never seen that street before, and it started snowing. And here she is in this little tiny cocktail dress. Well, about 3 in the morning, her roommates heard the door kick in, They live up 7 flights of stairs, and they live right next to, they live right in Saint-Germain. And then the next morning, they went to wake her up, and the first thing that she remembers is that they were waking her up saying, "We're going to Portugal today. We got to get the train." And she realizes that Morgan picked her up, carried her home all the way across Paris, kicked in the door, and put her in her bed. And I know that that sounds far-fetched for a lot of people, but with the things that have happened in my life since Morgan has transitioned, I don't think it's far-fetched at all. Yes, and this was before Morgan. It was in 1991 when we lived in France, and I had been on an IV for 2 months in a hospital in Montpellier. And Chelsea was born early, and it was very, very hard um, because her lungs were crushed when she was born. I had lost my water by the time that she was born, and I kept telling the gynecologist or the obstetrician, we need to have her now. Now, anyway, the thing that saved me when I got home from the hospital was having Morgan there, because he was 2 years old by that time, and being able to get back to him after being away from him for 2 months was just so wonderful. But the interesting thing about Chelsea is that when Morgan transitioned and he gave me that hug, and he kept giving me hugs over and over again, I've heard from several mediums that Chelsea was the first person to meet Morgan as he crossed over. She grabbed his hand and she led him to me. And I believe it. And I think that a lot of times people are sad or concerned that they haven't had a shared death experience. I think that living the way that I lived, dealing with the transition of Chelsea already, and then having Morgan transition after that, made me ready to be able to have these signs happen.
Were there any other things that helped you move forward and heal from those two tragic losses?
Yes, there were. And I think that it's important for everyone to understand that no one in your family group, even if you have a fabulous family, wants to hear about your children who have transitioned. They think that either, first of all, that we should get over it and we shouldn't be talking about our kids, or they think that if they do say the name of our children, it's going to make us sad and we'll start crying. We may start crying just because of the fact that we're so happy to hear about our kids, but we never cry out of sadness. It's so great to be able to share our kids. So I think that it's really important to have a community of people who have gone through the same thing, to be able to talk about the stories that we are experiencing, all of the signs, all of the validations that our kids are sending, and to talk about how to better connect with our kids in spirit as well.
At what point in your life did you found helping parents heal?
Well, that's a good question. So as soon as Morgan transitioned, I tried probably 3 different meetings that week, and then I started the Facebook group that same week, which wasn't called Helping Parents Heal initially, but it was, it transitioned into Helping Parents Heal 2 years later. And it was specifically because I wanted to find other parents who were experiencing the same kind of thing that I was. But this was in 2009, so it wasn't something that people talked about as much as they do now. And in fact, I would go to grief support meetings before, starting this, and I'd want to talk about some of the amazing signs that Morgan was sending me. And it'd be hard to get into all of those signs here because they're just too numerous to even talk about. But just one sign at a meeting, but I was told that parents are not allowed to speak about those kinds of things at those meetings. And so I thought, goodness, this is the most healing thing that's ever happened to me, to get these signs. And I'm sure that other parents are getting these signs as well. They don't just come to one person, they come to everyone. So um, I wanted to be able to create a group that would allow parents to know that everyone gets these signs. Sometimes we're too deep in grief in the very beginning to be able to recognize the signs, but they're still coming. Our kids are still sending them.
What are the common signs that parents should look for?
That's a very good question. Well, it's interesting because Karen Noe wrote an article about the 10 most common signs that we get um, from our children in spirit. And there are lots of different signs. One of them is different types of birds or animals that might come up to us or might hover around us in a way that they normally don't do. We talk about hummingbirds, we talk about cardinals, we talk about crows, we talk about deer as well, that just come and stand in your yard and stare at you. And um, those those things, if you notice, and for me, Morgan's big symbol is a bobcat, just because of or a wildcat, just because he was a University of Arizona wildcat. So when we hike in Spur Cross, one time that we were hiking, um, there was this bobcat that came straight up to me, and it was almost purring. And this happened to be on Morgan's birthday. So, and we took tons of pictures of it. It was just one of the most amazing things. And every time my husband and I go into the park, we always say, can you believe how close that bobcat got to us? And I like to document everything that happens to me, and I like to send it to our group as well, and other people send their own signs as well. That's one sign. There's so many other signs. I think that a lot of people realize that kids communicate through electricity too, turning on and off lights, um, and also just flickering lights in the middle of the night, or different things like that. And it shouldn't be scary. It's something that happens all the time. Sometimes our kids call us on our phone, and they're calling from their number, and we're answering and hearing someone on the other end. It's pretty amazing. Um, But that's another way that they do communicate, even if they don't have that number anymore. They don't have to have that number anymore. Um, they communicate through plumbing and pipes as well. They also communicate through things more simpler things like license plates. When you're following someone in a bunch of traffic and you see that perfect sign, or bumper, it's not bumper sticker, excuse me, license plate, that is exactly what the same thing that your child would have said if he were still here in the physical. Um, Rainbows, for instance, that come at very strange times. There are so many different ways that they communicate with us, and I feel that it's wonderful when people start recognizing them. Oh, feathers on the ground, and feathers that just appear at very strange places in the house, for instance. They just all of a sudden appear. So there are a lot of signs, and once you start talking to parents about this, they get very excited, and especially with some of the groups that, back when I was unable to say anything, I'd go out in the parking lot and they'd all come up to me and say, what signs are you getting? Because I want to see if maybe it's the same signs that I'm getting. And I'd say these things and they'd be like, oh, that's exactly what's happening to us. So kids do the same thing for every single parent. And it's really wonderful that they do let us know that they're okay and that they're together too, that they're all friends.
We just met, so you don't know what I talk about generally, but a lot of times podcasts continue from one to another. And I literally recorded one earlier today where the person was having cardinals visiting her, which she thought were her siblings in spirit.
Of course. Yes, I'm sure they are. And that's wonderful. I mean, the siblings aren't the cardinals, but the siblings are directing the cardinals to spend time with with the person that you were interviewing. And I think that that's just wonderful. I think that they kind of direct everything from above. They're almost like for the marionettes, and they're just getting us into situations where we can see these things. And I think that they also don't live in the same time space continuum, meaning that they know what's going to happen next, so they know how to get us from A to Z to be able to see these signs.
One thing that I think is great is that you started this organization on Facebook and it grew to something bigger and you moved it off platform.
Well, it's still on Facebook. We have all of our affiliate groups have Facebook groups because everything is very confidential. So we have to make sure that the meetings that the affiliate leaders are having are confidential, and doing it on Facebook allows us to do the events just in the group. But we also have physical in-person meetings, and yeah, it's grown like crazy. During the pandemic, we did everything on Zoom again. We went back to Zoom, and we had a lot of physical meetings in other places. But I think that it's exciting to be able to be reaching other areas of the world. And we have 34 caring listeners who are volunteer parents who have gone down the healing path a little bit farther, and they reach a hand back to others to help them forward. And we have, I believe, 11 languages spoken by our caring listeners. So Mandarin, Chinese, Cantonese, we have French, Spanish, Italian, as well as Romanian, German, Norwegian, let me think of the other ones, Arabic, and I should have looked this up but the really wonderful thing about this is that if you are in need of help pretty much anywhere in the world, you can call our caring listeners because they're spread out from Australia through Europe, through South Africa, and then Brazil, and Canada and the UK. And you can call one of the caring listeners and be able to have someone listen to you about your kid, which you don't necessarily want to speak to your family about. Not that our families aren't wonderful, but it's really, really hard, again, to be able to have the same amount of excitement from our family about doing a toast to our kids during the holidays or things like that, because they just don't understand. I don't think that and our families and our friends as well. I think that a lot of people feel that it's important to move forward and get over it, but we're never going to get over it. Our kids are with us for good, and they hold our hands and move us forward, and they are our biggest cheerleaders. Speaking of cheerleader, and they're the ones who help us heal.
In one way, you've moved your group off platform because you guys have like a big yearly conference, right? That's coming up in August.
Yes, it's actually every 2 years, because Irene Vuvalidis, who is the conference chair, and myself can't handle more than just every 2 years. But it's happening this year, and we have speakers from the Afterlife and grief community who come to speak to the parents. This year we'll have 1,000 parents, and we have about 44 speakers. And some of them are very, very well known. Anita Moorjani, as well as James Van Praagh, as well as Maureen Hancock, and Mark Anthony, Suzanne Giesman, Suzanne Wilson, Jeff O'Driscoll, so Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll, Dr. Mary Neal, Jeffrey Olson, as well as lots of other specialists in the afterlife community who do things like numerology and mediumship. So I know that you had the beautiful Sue Frederick on your show just recently talking about 2024, and she will be one of our speakers talking to the parents as well. But we have sibling groups, we have dads groups, we have all different kinds of specialty groups as well. So we'll have panels about suicide, although we believe that our transition is just an exit point. But a lot of times parents like to be able to meet with people who have gone through the same kind of experience. It's not because we think that there's anything different about that exit point. It's just because they like to get together. And we also have a panel about substance use, children who have passed through substance use. And we'll have a dad's panel. And it's a beautiful weekend. The property is just so wonderful. And we try to keep it as affordable as possible. We had lots of scholarships that we gave out as well. Last conference, we gave out 110 out of the 900 people who came. This year, we've already given out quite a few, and I'm not sure how many we have left to give out, but we still have about 150 spaces that are available if anyone's interested. And anyway, thank you for asking.
Sure. Can you tell us about the documentary by Craig McMahon?
Yes, I would love to. Actually, it was such a wonderful thing. I met him at an AREI conference, and he said that he was doing a movie. He wanted to talk about parents who had had their children transition, but he wanted to talk about how they were moving forward in healing. And I thought that that would be perfect for us. And I introduced him to 20 members of Helping Parents Heal. In fact, the movie itself is the same cover, and it's free on YouTube and on Amazon Prime. I believe you have to pay $5.99 now. It used to be that it was free as well. But we created this book through all of the parents because even though the movie itself was wonderful and talked about our signs and the things that we were getting from our kids, Craig was worried about making it too out there. This was back in 2019, I believe, and he was afraid that people would make fun of us or they would think that it was just too much to believe. So he said, we're going to have to do a Life to Afterlife Helping Parents Heal 2.2. But I was told that we needed to do the book. And so that's how the book came about. And this is a book that we give away every 3 months on Amazon Kindle, so that anyone who wants to be able to have the book is able to. And by the way, I was just going to show you, this is from our second conference. So this was 2 years ago. This is the program. And this is an angel that was donated by Gordon Smith. And
Nice.
we have the original as well. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's on the back cover of this. But anyway, the book is so uplifting because all of these parents experienced the same kind of very difficult journey in the very beginning, but they all have found healing, and they're all a big part of Helping Parents Heal as well. Now that they, I guess, get it, it's that our kids, it's almost as though they're on a study abroad program. We can still communicate with them. We know that they're okay. We know that they're having a blast. All of our kids in spirit are having so much more fun than we are, obviously. this life is not easy, but their life is very easy, and they just want us to be happy.
If you had a friend that lost somebody to the other side, whether it was a child or not, what kind of advice would you give?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it depends on if it was a child. I think that it's always important to let the person know that um, before you have any idea of what type of belief system they have, that you're there for them and that you can sit there and not say anything for as long as they want. I also think that if it is the passing of a child, it's probably the most difficult passing that anyone would go through. And I think that pretty much everyone agrees on this. I believe that it sets lots of people out into journeys to find out more about the afterlife, journeys that they never in a million years would have thought that they would take because their lives were perfect and there was no reason to be looking into this kind of thing. I have friends who've read, 80 books in the first year. I know that I read about 80 myself. My first was Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody, and that was wonderful. And, I think that the important thing is that the people who are coming to the groups, even if they don't believe that they can connect with their children in spirit, when they see that we are connecting with our children in spirit and that we're happy because we are. And the thing that sets Helping Parents Heal apart from other bereavement support groups, and I don't like the word bereavement because it's one of the saddest words in the dictionary. We call ourselves Shining Light Parents because Suzanne Giesemann meditated to try to find something that would be more beautiful than bereaved parent. And we love the term Shining Light Parent. But what I was going to say is that being able to be around other parents who have experienced this, but who have been able to move forward and heal, I think is a very healing thing for a lot of the other parents. And we do lots of activities, not just the meetings that we have. We do hikes, we do cookie exchanges, we have Christmas parties and white elephant things. And so there's a lot that goes on besides just having the meetings where we pass a talking stick and we talk about our kids the whole time.
What is the best way to acknowledge signs and move them from just being coincidences to being actual signs?
I think that's an excellent question. And I think that it has to do with being able to raise our vibration. I think that a lot of people are in a state of very, very deep sorrow in the beginning, and that's completely normal. I was different just because I had this jump start, just because Morgan gave me that hug, and I had already been dealing with Chelsea's transition. But if it's okay, I have this very short section in the book
Sure.
that talks about the best ways to heal from the passing of a child. And these are including, first of all, know that your child is not gone. The veil that separates you from your son or daughter is as thin as a sheet of wax paper. And when we see them again, we will feel as though not 1 second has passed. As Suzanne Giesemann so eloquently puts it, our kids are still right here. The second one that I have is take one breath at a time, then 1 minute at a time until you are ready to move forward. Everyone's journey is different. Don't compare yours to anyone else's. You are unique, just as your child is unique. Know that your child is happy, healthy, and home, as I was saying, and we are still in school. We have so much to accomplish before we hug our kids again. But for now, they walk beside us, holding our hands and leading us to healing. Surround yourself with friends who understand. I think that this is a very important thing. Our kids in spirit are all friends with each other. It is they who have connected us here on earth. Expand your friend base to include those who love to hear about your child in spirit. We keep them alive in our hearts and spirits by continuing to tell their stories. And then be kind both to yourself and to others. Helping others helps us even more. This is one of the most important things to remember. Once you move forward on the path to healing, reach a hand back to others who are not so far along the path. And I think that that's what's helped me the most, is just being able to help other people to move forward. Express gratitude. And I think that probably you do that all the time. We have so much to be grateful for in this journey. Watch for the signs and gifts that your children send you, and be sure to always thank them. This is something that's really important, because if they see that they're working, that the signs are working, they're going to send more. If they see that we're just completely blasé, they'll probably think, maybe I should try something different next time. Express forgiveness for yourself and others. I think that that's something that's very important. We cannot heal without letting go of feelings of guilt and anger that hold us back. Live each day in honor of your child in spirit. They are so proud of us, and they share in everything that we do. Raise your vibration. Eat healthy plant-based foods if you can. You don't have to. Practice yoga and meditation. Take long hikes outdoors. Take off your shoes and connect with the earth. Use crystals and essential oils. Use sound meditation and breathing exercises. And again, practice kindness whenever you can. So we teach all of these different things, the breathing exercises, the essential oils, as well as the yoga, meditation, and things like that. And then the last one is learn to communicate with your child in spirit through automatic writing, guided meditation, the pendulum, dream visits, mirror gazing, forest bathing, Reiki, and much more. We can do this, and our kids high five each other every time they see us smile. So that's just kind of a shortened list of things that I believe have helped me to move forward and heal, but I also see it helping other people in the group.
Elizabeth, if people have questions for you, should they seek you out on Facebook?
Yeah, or let's see, on Facebook. I think that it's easier though, just my email. And we have a website as well that has all of our resources. So including the caring listeners and we have a list of providers that have been certified by Mark Ireland and the Windbridge Institute. We also have probably 600 now Zoom meetings that have been uploaded to YouTube with experts from the Afterlife community, including Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Eben Alexander, Dr. Mary Neal, and all of these other people who have, especially during the pandemic, interviewed with us, as well as parents who have moved forward and healed. There are so many resources there that people can look at and get help from. And we have a recommended reading list on there as well. So there are a lot of things that people can do, but I am happy to talk to anyone who would like to reach out.
What's the web address?
The web address is www.helpingparentsheal.org. And it's fairly easy. If you just Google Helping Parents Heal, you'll probably find it. But I also just wanted to say that this book is going to be, is this okay, Jeff, if I say this?
Sure.
It's going to be free to download on Kindle from the 11th of January until the 15th of January. And we do this every 3 months because we really like to be able to give these books away. But anyway, if you're interested in getting it, please just download it then.
Is your contact email on your website?
It's on my website, but it's really easy. I can just give it to you right now. It's Elizabeth at helpingparentsheal.org.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want us to know about?
Oh, goodness, just the conference right now. We'd love to see as many people as possible. Irene and I are just thrilled that we've had such a huge response, but we'd love to have all 1,000 people at the conference. And I believe that that's all. And I truly appreciate you having me on here today.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Of course, yes. I am so honored to be able to be a voice for a lot of parents who have had this this thing happen to them, which is, again, one of the most devastating that could ever happen to anyone. Having a child transition is extremely difficult. And in spite of the fact that we know that they are spiritually with us, that they're with us all the time, the physical is what we miss the most. Um, I I just want people to know that you can move forward and heal. It is possible to do so, and that we have thousands of parents who have done so, who prove it. And we actually have another book like this coming out written by dads, because dads heal in a completely different way than moms do. So it's going to be available at the conference as well.
That's great. Elizabeth, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. I was very honored to be here. And it was just so wonderful to spend some time with you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for your kind words. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.